I was having lunch with my dad in a local restaurant. And the last thing I remember, I think, is him starting to get up to go because he was heading to the airport. And then everything's completely black. And the next thing was I woke up in a hotel bed next to a man I'd never seen before. And I was naked. My clothes were on the floor next to me in a pile with my handbag. And I had no idea where I was or who he was. And it was terrifying.
And you go into the bathroom and we're in the evening, late in the evening,
Yeah.
You call your friends and they call the police. So
Yeah.
you immediately get in contact with the police.
Yeah. And it turns out that the first thing that I did wrong was letting my friend call the police. Because from that moment on, they were looking at me as an attention seeker. What was I doing wrong that I wasn't the one that called the police? The fact of the matter is, rape victims react however rape victims react. I felt that I'd been drugged, and apparently I sounded incoherent, and I've never done drugs in my life. And that was part of what made my friend decide to call the police. And also when I said that the man, who I didn't know, was still in that hotel room. I got outside the hotel room door, my phone rang, and it was the police. I walked down the stairs and basically fell into the arms of a police person at the bottom of the stairs. And I had this overriding feeling of relief in that moment because I assumed I was safe. I assumed that, like in TV, from the moment the police arrived, it would be sorted and that this person would be investigated and charged and prosecuted and that it would be up to a jury to decide whether or not he was guilty of rape.
Right, and that very clearly did not happen.
That did not happen.
There were things that went against you, though, including there was a toxicology report.
Yeah.
And it suggested that you had not been drugged.
Yeah, so there were a number of problems with the toxicology report. The first one is that in February of 2016, so nearly a year later, when I finally got a copy of the toxicology report, I found out that the police had given the wrong timeline to the laboratory at the very beginning of this. And that means that the way the police were reading the toxicology results is definitively I hadn't been drugged. It wasn't definitive because the reality was GHB metabolizes out in 6 to 12 hours, like more than 80% of the time. Perhaps the worst thing about the toxicology report was that that's where I found out that my attacker was completely sober. And though they couldn't prove that I'd been drugged, and though the toxicology showed that I was only 2 times the legal limit for drinking, which they decided wasn't a high enough level for a consent case, there's CCTV of me stumbling. I fell over in front of the hotel room door. But perhaps even most damning is that the police wouldn't take me to get a forensic medical exam 7 hours after the sex happened because they deemed me to be too intoxicated to give consent for a medical procedure.
What you did eventually get, because you didn't get a prosecution, was that you learnt also that he had taken video of you.
Yeah, just more than a year after I woke up in that hotel room, the police came to talk to me and they told me that my attacker had taken a 1 minute and 2 second long video of me naked and unconscious on the hotel bed. And that he'd said at the time that he took it to masturbate to later. And also that he said that he knew that he did not have my permission to take that video. The police also told me at the time that he'd admitted to masturbating onto me while I was unconscious on the bed. And I was horrified, just horrified. But also when I composed myself after they told me that, my first question was, so these seem like crimes, what are we doing? And they looked at me like it was the strangest thing to ask. They said that it wasn't illegal to take the video. And I reached out to the CPS and asked them to consider prosecuting on the basis of the video. And that's when they told me that it was not illegal to take a video of someone if you were in the same room, that there was no reasonable sense of privacy if you were allowing someone to see you naked, or in my case, could not prove that I had not consented to him seeing me naked.
Now, you were able to establish that the CPS saying that was wrong.
So, yeah, I crowdfunded a judicial review. So I actually started lobbying MPs to change the law. But then the government came back to me and said the strangest thing, which was, well, we can't comment on your individual case. The sort of action that you're describing is already illegal. Right. And that's when I brought the judicial review. We were able to, through the courts, clarify that what happened to me was illegal, and my attacker was charged and he did plead guilty to voyeurism.
And he was given a community sentence.
Yeah.
I mean, throughout all this, you dealt with all the difficulties of trying to prove something. If there were a similar case now, Would someone have the same problems, or is the whole system better than it was then?
On specifically voyeurism, there are cases now that are going forward where victims have been told specifically that they're going forward because of the work that we did to clarify that law. Rape is a much more complicated one. I was raped in 2015, and there's been a lot of press about the fact that from 2016 on, rape prosecutions in this country plummeted 70% in 5 years. And where we are now is finally starting to see that turnaround happen. So I'm an advisor to the government on the rape review. So the government committed in June of 2021 to return to rape prosecutions to the same number as in 2016. But for me, the numbers in 2016 were terrible. We were still in single digits of prosecutions and convictions. Worse, because there's a worse, is academic research from abroad and now research that's happened here with police forces in the last year show that rape is often done by repeat offenders. The majority of uncaught rapists go on to rape again, and they rape on average 5.8 times over the course of their lives. For every rape that isn't prosecuted, there's a greater than coin toss chance that rapist will go on to do it again. A study in this country from 2016, so a bit older, a third of men said that they thought that it was consent for sex if a woman flirted over dinner. Flirted over dinner. A third of men. So for me, we need to wheel back all of this to really big conversations about what it means to consent to sex.
Okay, and what about people like Andrew Tate, the influencer who's been arrested on rape and trafficking charges? He has a huge sort of support among young men typically. Is he creating an environment?
Andrew Tate is scary because he talks about rape as something that the victims cause or can be contributing to causing, whatever his words were. The nature of the conversation is terrifying because women are viewed as other, as not human, as gatekeepers to sex and gatekeepers to sex only. I am definitely more than a gatekeeper to sex. I am a person. How do you convince someone that women are human when that should be pretty obvious?
Emily Hunt.